His ambition and his vulnerability, his humour. I mean, it was just the tip of the iceberg in this film for me, but there were little moments in the script that Matt wrote in relation to Oz, little bits of humour and awkwardness as well, and his origin, you know, why he is the man he is and all that stuff. If we get 6 or 8 hours to do it, I just think the character could be endlessly fun and fascinating and brutal, and I hear that we're going to be allowed kind of do an R-rated version perhaps, which would be nice to explore that, the violence that could permit perhaps, and the darkness that could allow us to explore, so all those things.
Right, welcome ladies and gents. Sunday here today, a little bit more relaxed here on Sundays. We're going to be talking about the Penguin from the Batman. You would have seen in the clip just at the start, because I thought I would just lead with that and just show it straight away, because why not? Colin Farrell has all but confirmed it's going to be an R-rated HBO Max Penguin series, which is fucking awesome. Really, really good news. Like, that's probably some of the best news you could get with this. And, you know, I think it's important to differentiate between, you know, the sort of PG-13 mandate which Warner Brothers gave Matt Reeves versus an R-rated HBO Max spin-off series. Penguin as an R-rated focus works. You know, you could definitely do an R-rated Batman. Of course you could. But it's similar to The Joker. The Joker needed to be R-rated. That film needed to be R-rated. I think a Penguin spin-off series about someone who is so brutal and so violent and does partake in high levels of criminality and is obviously the lowest of the low, I guess, would need to be R-rated. It's similar to The Joker, that sort of brutality and violence that character can exhibit. R-rated is essentially the only way you could do it. You know, the Batman doesn't have to be brutal. One of the best iterations of the Batman is Batman the Animated Series, right? And I stand by that. I don't give a shit what anyone says. Batman the Animated Series is one of the best incarnations of Batman we have ever had. It is my personal favourite above all films. And I think ultimately, you know, that showed you don't need to do an R-rated Batman, because that is one of the best. Kevin Conroy nails Batman. So, let's take a look at the article today, ladies and gents, and then we will give you some more of my thoughts. But I hope you're well. Hope you're having a great weekend. What do you personally think of an R-rated Penguin series on HBO Max? What do you think? Yay or nay? I'm sure there'll be lots of yays, that's for sure. So, let's take a look, right? The Batman star Colin Farrell seemingly confirms that the Penguin HBO Max series will be R-rated. And I mean, again, I'll play it again now.
His ambition and his vulnerability, his humour. I mean, it was just the tip of the iceberg in this film for me, but there were little moments in the script that Matt wrote in relation to Oz, little bits of humour and awkwardness as well, and his origin, you know, why he is the man he is and all that stuff. If we get 6 or 8 hours to do it, I just think the character could be endlessly fun and fascinating and brutal, and I hear that we're going to be allowed kind of do an R-rated version perhaps, which would be nice to explore that, the violence that could permit perhaps, and the darkness that could allow us to explore, so all those things.
There you go. It's essentially confirming it, isn't it, right? Like, it does confirm it. I have heard that we should be able to do that. Now, the article states that, you know, despite plenty of speculation and rumours to the contrary, it was always highly unlikely that the Batman would be a hit with an R rating. And that is true, right? Like, you know, we'll cover that in a moment, but it is true. But HBO Max is not bound by the same constraints and considerations as Warner Brothers theatrical releases, and that's what we'll get into discussion-wise. And it sounds like the planned Penguin spin-off series will take full advantage. During an interview with Rotten Tomatoes, Colin Farrell spoke about his interpretation of the classic DC Comics villain. The Irish actor said he was looking forward to exploring Oz in more depth, and that he's heard we're going to be allowed to do kind of an R-rated version of the character. So it doesn't sound like things are completely set in stone, of course not, but it's pretty legit. But if the still untitled Penguin show is being developed with an R rating in mind, there's a good chance the GCPD spin-off will follow suit. I actually disagree with that, personally. I don't think the GCPD will be R-rated. I also don't think it has to be, in fairness. It's all about corruption and stuff like that. Farrell has a relatively small part in the movie, but he delivers a show-stealing turn as Oz. So looking forward to seeing a lot more of him in the series and hopefully eventual sequel. And that's actually from someone who's watched the film. The individual that wrote this, Mark Cassidy, from this individual, Mark Cassidy, Raw Machine, they have actually seen it. So they're saying that, yeah, he has a small part. We all knew that anyway, but he delivers a show-stealing turn as Oz. So, I mean, let's talk about this, right? So, in terms of the Batman being R-rated versus the Penguin being R-rated, and those two, I guess, sort of polarizing opinions, the Batman was never ever going to be R-rated. Anyone who said otherwise or hoped otherwise, simply like economics, it just doesn't work. And I know a lot of people will be like, yeah, but the Joker. The Joker's a great example where R-rated absolutely floored it. It absolutely killed it. It was great. The Batman does need to appeal to kids as well, right? Like, kids do need to go and watch the Batman. For Warner Brothers as a company and entity to be fully happy, we've never had an R-rated Batman before. We don't need an R-rated Batman. You can do all of the levels of brutality that is encompassed within like a PG-13 sort of rating. I guess like a 12A, like a 15 or whatever in the UK. You can do all of that, right, without going R-rated. R rating, if you understand the way rating systems work, R rating is quite specific. Like, you do have to include, I think it's a significant amount of F-bombs to make it like R-rated. So, you know, I'm not imagining, you know, Batman running around, Robert Pattinson running around going, oh, fucking could have fucking get you fucking work. Like, you just, what? No, that doesn't make any sense to me. That would be very strange. Doesn't need to be R-rated for that. There also needs to be sex scenes and nudity. And look, you know, I know Robert Pattinson's got his top off in the trailer, but that doesn't constitute as high levels of nudity to push it to R-rated. You know, and Kravitz, Catwoman, from what we can tell, does not get nude. So we certainly won't be seeing her her kitten, floating around in the movie. I might edit that out. Probably not. So R rating is quite specific, and there also has to be a certain amount of blood and gore. And although we can clearly see some elements of that in the movie, especially with respect to the Riddler and kind of what he's doing in this film, it doesn't look like it constitutes enough to push it to an R rating. However, we have heard from Matt Reeves, and this kind of goes on to you know, another point. I was going to do a separate video on this, but I think we'll just cover this in this video to make it a little bit more universal. But this is about Matt Reeves explaining why Warner Brothers' mandate was to make it PG-13. That was their only mandate. They said it has to be PG-13, right? So he spoke to Collider, and he says they embraced it the whole time about the horror aspect. The director said of his grounded, darker approach to the material, there was never a moment where they said to me, "Are you sure? Let's not." They really leaned into everything, and I've had a lot, and I've had the support too. I have to say, this movie is exactly the movie I wanted it to be, and they have supported me all the way through it. One thing they did do, which was my intention from the beginning, was they said, look, it's important to us that the movie will be PG-13. It's a Batman movie, and we're investing so much into it, which does make sense. Business, it would be, you'd be like, oh, Warner Brothers are dumb otherwise. Like, it's true. And he said, well, in the Apes movies, I tried to sort of find that balance as well. I felt like in the same way, I knew that we could push the boundaries of what you could do in a PG-13 movie and still deliver everything that he personally wanted to do. And that's the thing. They're clearly pushing the boundaries. You can see that with the horror aspect. They're really pushing that, and it works. Now, a Penguin movie, which is obviously a Penguin series, which is what this is all about, being R-rated, a lot of that does actually... You know, it doesn't have to be R-rated, but you would get a better version of the character and his story being R-rated. You wouldn't have to do dumb cutaways where he's cutting people up and things like this. The level of gore and brutality that the Penguin should exhibit as a crime boss or a wannabe crime boss does need to be quite high. Like, we need to fear this character. We need to know his strength of conviction through his actions. And some of those actions will be brutal, and they do have to be seen. And in the sort of seedy underworld, yeah, I would expect some levels of nudity. Like, I would expect him to have strippers floating around him and things like that in a club. Or, do you know what I mean? Like, you would expect some sort of sex, drugs, and excess in there. You just would, and that starts to push it to an R rating. And although I can't imagine Batman dropping F-bombs and it actually landing, I can imagine Penguin and his lackeys dropping F-bombs and it landing. So there is a differentiation. I don't think the Penguin has to be R-rated, but I think to get potentially the best story, R rating is potentially the best course of action. But what do you guys think? Let me know down below. If you're new here, do hit subscribe. Would love to have you here more often. Also, just check you're subscribed. Returning subscribers, just check. But thanks so much. Hope you're having a fantastic weekend. Enjoy the sun. In the UK anyway, we've actually got some sun. I'll be reviewing the Batman on Thursday. I've got a Thursday night preview ticket. So thanks so much for watching. Come back then, watch my review. Cheers, guys. Take care.